Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Politis, and I'm here with the Santa Barbara Rugby Academy, and I'm going to share with you a hip drill that's going to be a dynamic warm-up to hit every part of the hip, and when it's all put together, it should take about 5 minutes. So the concepts are pretty simple. We're going to hit the hip flexors, we're going to hit the hamstrings with the toes turned in, the hamstrings with the toes turned out, the groin, and then the back of the hip, and tie that into our back. As we do it, we're going to move through 3 planes of motion. That's how our bodies are designed. We're going to move forward and back, we're going to move side to side, and then we're going to rotate. We're going to do 5 reps for each of those directions, hitting each part of the hip. So, you can use a rugby ball if you want. It can kind of help out. You're going to get onto one knee. We're going to hit the hip flexor first. We're going to go forward and back. This is a dynamic warm-up where we want to start to open up the front of the hip, get it nice and loose, and then every part has to go through all 3 planes of motion. So then we go side to side. We go back and forth. You want to let your hips move, and then we rotate. And you can imagine you're passing a ball left and passing a ball right. We're going to hit about 5 reps for each of that. That's the hip flexor. Now we're going to go to the hamstrings with the toes turned in. Hamstrings are like reins on a horse. They start up in the back of your hip and they wrap around the knee on either side. They control the in and the out. So we're going to start with the toes turned in, trunk nice and tall, and you're reaching out over your toes for about 5 reps. And then you're going to be going left and right as you're reaching out, keeping the toes turned in, little bend in the knee, and then you're going to rotate back and forth, still reaching out over the toes. After 5 reps, then we're going to turn and hit the hamstrings with the toes turned out. Again, trunk nice and tall, bending through the hips, reaching out over the toes, and then you're going to hit left and right. You should be reaching out to feel a good stretch, but not hitting any pain, and then you're going to rotate back and forth. Letting the body move, twisting through the hips, that's all part of what we want. Good. So after that, we hit the groin. For this, we turn the bottom knee out 90 degrees. We keep our shoulders focused or oriented towards the front foot. We're going to start with the forward and back. As you lift your arms up, you want to drive your hips forward. And then from overhead, we're going side to side. And then we're going to rotate. And again, you want to let yourself twist through the hips and the trunk. This is also warming up your spine as well as your hips. Good. Then we're going to hit the back of the hip. So for this, we drop the front leg down, stretch the back leg out, and we're going to take our opposite hand from the front foot, and we're going to reach out to stretch out your back. You reach out about 5 times, and then from there you keep your hand there, and you try and wiggle your hips side to side. Good. And that's one leg, so then you switch it up and repeat. So we're hitting the hip flexor first, we're running through the forward and back, driving your hips forward as you go forward and back, then hands overhead, side to side. Let the hips go, let your spine bend, use your ribs. This is a dynamic warm-up where we're getting all the parts moving and lubricated, turning on the nervous system. So after the hip flexor, then we're going to hit the hamstring, knee bent, toes turned in, reaching out in front of the toes, keeping the trunk nice and tall, bending through the hips. And then we're going side to side, reaching right and left. And then you're rotating back and forth. Good. Again, rotate through the hips, the spine, the shoulders. And then we're going to turn and hit the toes out, hamstrings, toes turn out, reaching out in front. Going left and right. And then rotating. Good. For this side, we hit the groin, turn the bottom leg out 90 degrees. Shoulders are oriented towards the front foot, reaching the hands out and then up overhead, driving the hips forward. This is opening up the groin. And then side to side. And then rotating back and forth. Then finally on this side, you drop that front foot down, kick the back leg out. The ball goes in the opposite hand from the front foot, and you reach out in front of you. That ties in getting the back of the shoulder and the latissimus with the glute on the other side, and then you hold that, and you try and move your hips side to side. And that's the hip routine. Some of the key points for the hip drill are that it seems complex at first, but it's broken down into a simple formula. We move in 3 directions for each of the major hip positions. We move forward and back in the sagittal plane, we move side to side in the frontal plane, and we rotate through the transverse plane. For each position that we get into with the hips, whether it's the hip flexor, the hamstring with the toes in, hamstrings with the toes out, the groin, or the back of the hip, we're going to be trying to move our bodies through 3 planes of motion, forward and back, side to side, and rotate. We're doing just 5 reps for each position and for each motion that we're going through.